Lee Wai-bin, now 28, steps back into Seoul with the confidence of a woman who rebuilt herself brick by brick. After her world shattered 4 years ago, catching her fiancé Park Jung-woo and her best friend Mina in bed together just days before the wedding, she disappeared to London carrying the weight of betrayal and humiliation. But time had done its magic. Now Wai-bin is back. Not to forgive, but to rise. She meets old friends Myra, her ride-or-die bestie for 20 years who always warned her about Mina, Rose, and even Mina herself. Mina tries to play it off, apologizing, pretending time heals everything. Wai-bin smiles sweetly and says, "You're right, I should be thanking you for saving me from wasting my life on a cheater. But revenge doesn't always wear fire. Sometimes it wears a calm smile." When Myra and Rose discuss where Wai-bin will stay, Mina, trying to be the bigger person, offers her spare room. "I live with my fiancé now. He barely comes home anyway. Lots of space. Come with me." Wai-bin hesitates, but agrees. Little does she know that home belongs to none other than Kim Taehyung. What Mina doesn't know is that Wai-bin never forgets. And she's not here to forgive, she's here to rewrite her story. Wai-bin stepped into the luxurious home, heels softly clicking against the marble floor. The house had an expensive silence to it, cold, minimal, not the warmth you expect in a couple's nest. Mina called out, "Tae, you home?" No reply. Wai-bin gave a polite, fake smile. Typical workaholic fiancé, she thought. Her suitcase rolled beside her as Mina began showing her the guest room, but just then the front door clicked. Footsteps, she turned, and there he stood, Kim Taehyung. Wearing a black suit, slightly loosened tie, tired eyes. But he stopped, literally froze when he saw her. Wai-bin's eyes widened slightly, not in recognition, but something else. That strange pull in the chest, her breath caught just for a moment. Taehyung blinked, their eyes locked. Her heartbeat and wanted thudded in her ears. And for him, the world suddenly narrowed to just her. The suitcase, the awkward tension, Mina's voice in the background, all blurred. Mina laughed nervously. "Oh, Taehyung, meet Wai-bin, my best friend from high school. She's staying here for a bit." Taehyung's jaw clenched faintly. He looked between the two women. "Best friend?" He nodded politely. "Nice to meet you, Wai-bin." Wai-bin gave a short nod back. "Likewise, Mr. Kim." But something in her voice, the softness laced with steel, made his eyes flicker. Their eyes held for a moment too long again. And in that silence, the storm began brewing. The dining table was set elegantly, warm lights casting soft golden glows across the plates. Mina sat at the head, fingers dancing across her phone screen, smiling at texts, replying with emojis. Wai-bin sat across from Taehyung, silent, her fingers toying with the edge of her glass of water. Taehyung hadn't spoken much either, just soft nods, a few pleas past the salt, and half-hearted bites of food. But every now and then, he looked up, so did she. And when their eyes met, they looked away just as quickly. Something unspoken stirred between them. Booze. "This client is so dumb," Mina muttered, rolling her eyes, still glued to her phone. "I swear I handle everything while Tae works like a robot." Taehyung didn't respond. Wai-bin just smiled faintly, raising an eyebrow. "Busy work schedule, huh?" Taehyung finally looked at her directly. "It's what keeps things moving." Their eyes locked again. There it was, that strange warmth, familiar yet unknown. Wai-bin blinked slowly and sipped her water to cool the sudden flush creeping up her neck. Mina didn't even notice. She laughed at something on her phone. "Anyway, I hope you to get along. Tae's super private, but he's harmless." Harmless? Wai-bin almost laughed. She glanced at Taehyung once again, sharp jawline, eyes like storms. A presence that made her spine straighten without trying. Harmless. That man looked like he could wreck someone's world without even touching them. "Yes," Wai-bin murmured. "I'll try." Taehyung smirked under his breath. And somewhere in that quiet tension, where every accidental glance meant too much, and every silence screamed louder than words, Mina just scrolled on, blind to the fire she had just let into her home. Wyan stepped out of the guest room in her soft pajamas, tying her hair up in a loose bun. The house was quiet now. Mina had gone to bed early, too busy setting alarms and talking about early meetings. Fresh out of the shower, wearing a black shirt and gray joggers, hair slightly wet, falling over his eyes. His hand froze halfway as he reached for the door handle to his study. Their eyes met again, no noise, no footsteps, just that moment. Wyan's heart skipped a beat. Taehyung cleared his throat and stepped slightly to the side. "Sorry, no, sorry," she said, holding the glass a little tighter. "Didn't mean to block the hallway." He nodded. "You're not." An awkward pause. She looked at him, and maybe for the first time, really saw him not as Mina's fiancé, but as a man. One who looked exhausted, but also observant, curious, a little cold, maybe, but not cruel. "You've been living here long?" she asked casually. "Couple years," he said, "mostly alone, though." Another pause. His gaze dropped to her hand. "You okay, HM?" "You're gripping that glass like it owes you money." She blinked, looked down, then laughed lightly. "Guess I'm just adjusting." Understandable. He reached for the study door again, paused, and said without looking back, "This house has thin walls." Wyan raised a brow. "Okay." Taehyung looked over his shoulder. "So if you're crying, or laughing, or can't sleep, I'll probably hear it." A flicker of something passed through his expression. He disappeared into his room, and Wyan stood there alone in the hallway, but suddenly not feeling so alone at all. The house was still, except for the faint sound of sizzling butter. Wyan stood by the stove in an oversized sweatshirt and pajama shorts, flipping a piece of toast. Her hair was tied in a lazy bun, face fresh, a little sleepy, but peaceful. A plate with eggs and a mug of coffee sat beside her. Mina was still fast asleep upstairs. Too many late-night calls again. She heard footsteps behind her, slow and precise. Taehyung. He walked into the kitchen already dressed for work, crisp black pants, pale blue shirt with the sleeves half rolled. His tie hung loosely around his neck, briefcase in one hand, watch in the other. His brows furrowed slightly when he saw Wyan cooking. "You're up early," he said. Wyan smiled without looking. Habit. London mornings always started early. Taehyung opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, then turned to leave. "Wait," she said quickly. He paused, looking back at her. "You didn't eat anything." She gestured to the plate on the counter. "At least have a bite before you rush off." "I'm fine. I usually grab something on the way." Wyan raised a brow. "Gas station coffee and a granola bar." He blinked, a little caught. "You'll be hungry before your first meeting," she said, sliding the plate toward him. "Come on, I made extra." Taehyung stared at her for a second too long, then set down his briefcase. He sat across the kitchen island. Wyan poured him coffee. Silence. He took a bite, chewed slowly, then glanced at her. "You made all this for yourself." "I didn't think you'd be up yet," she said with a shrug. "Mina said you sleep in." Taehyung gave a slow nod. "She thinks I do." Wyan tilted her head slightly. "But you don't." He didn't reply, just sipped the coffee. Then suddenly he said, "This is better than the cafe downstairs." Wyan smiled faintly. "Thank you." There was something warm in the room now. Not from the stove, not from the toast, just two strangers slowly unstrangering. He wiped his mouth with a napkin and stood. "I'll see you tonight." Wyan nodded. "Have a good day." And just as he reached for his briefcase, she added with a teasing smirk, "Don't skip lunch." Taehyung paused, glanced back with a half smile, then walked out. Wyan sat curled on the couch, sipping juice, flipping through a fashion magazine. The soft jazz playing on the Bluetooth speaker added a cozy touch. Mina walked in, phone in hand, just done with another call, probably a networking session with some socialite. Finally, Wyan said, placing the magazine down. "I've been waiting to ask you something." Mina smirked and sat beside her, throwing her legs up. "Shoot." Wyan twirled the glass in her hand. "You and Taehyung, how did that happen? I mean, the guy's the literal president of a company. You never mentioned him back in the day." Mina grinned proudly, leaning back like she was about to narrate an epic. "Oh girl, let me tell you, it's a wild one." Wyan raised a brow. "I love wild." Mina leaned forward dramatically, lowering her voice like she was dropping nuclear tea. "So 2 years ago, I was crossing a street in Gangnam and saw this fancy car coming full speed. And guess who was frozen in the middle of the road like a deer in headlights?" "Mrs. Kim," Wyan guessed. "Bingo." Mina snapped her fingers. I yanked her out just in time. She was so grateful she literally hugged me like I'd saved her from a war. Wyan blinked. "That's intense." "That's opportunity," Mina corrected, eyes gleaming. "She insisted I come home with her, said she owed me her life, so I made sure to impress. Brought flowers, helped around the house, acted like her long-lost daughter." Wyan quietly observed her, the dramatic eyes, the smirk, the twisted glee. Mina went on. "Within a week, she called me Beta. Then came the matchmaking. Next thing I knew, she was telling Taehyung how I'd be the perfect wife, loyal, sweet, humble." "Ha!" She giggled like a witch from a drama. Wyan barely kept a straight face. Humble, this woman. Mina's eyes sparkled like a villain revealing her evil plan. "I mean, come on. Who says no to the president's mother?" Taehyung agreed. "We got engaged." Wyan stared for a second, lips twitching. Mina's pride, her shameless strategy, it was disgusting, like watching a rat wear diamonds. But before Mina could notice, Wyan smiled, tilting her head in fake amazement. "Wow," she said, "that's insane. I wish I get a chance like that. Maybe I'll save someone's grandmother next." Both of them burst into laughter, but one was from genuine amusement, and the other a cover-up for quiet revulsion. The sky outside painted Seoul in dusky lavender. The warm lights inside Mina's luxury apartment softened the vibe. Wyan, now in a soft cardigan and loose bun, sat on the couch scrolling through her phone. A fashion blog post she was reading reminded her of Yoonha, oddly. Knock knock, the door opened. "Taehyung, you're back." Mina called out from the kitchen, stirring a pot with one hand and still glued to her phone with the other. Wyan looked up as Taehyung walked in, loosening his tie. His eyes met hers across the room. A beat passed, something skipped. "Hi," Wyan greeted softly. "Hey," he replied, voice equally calm, yet something lingered in his gaze. She stood up, casually walking toward the kitchen. "You must be starving." "I'll help with dinner." "I got it," Mina chirped. "Wyan, you relax." But Taehyung gently held Wyan's wrist as she passed him. "You made breakfast today," he murmured. "You're making dinner too." Wyan gave him a small smile. "I like cooking," he nodded, watching her closely. From the kitchen, Mina called out, "Hey, honey, can you taste the stew?" "I'll be right there," he said without breaking eye contact. Wyan turned away, but not before their fingers brushed, intentionally or not, neither knew. Mina, still clueless, asked while checking her reflection in a shiny pan, "Oh, Wyan, remember we planned movie night tonight?" Wyan blinked. "We did, yep. Me, you, Tae, cozy movie night. Old friends catching up, right babe?" Taehyung forced a polite smile. "Sure." He moved to the kitchen, took the spoon from Mina, tasted the stew. "It's fine," he muttered. "Need salt. I told you." But whatever, she laughed, tossing her hair and poking his chest. You're always too picky. Won pretended to check her phone to hide her smirk. Picky? No, just observant, she thought. Later that night, as they sat in front of the TV, Mina snuggled to Taehyung's side. He barely reacted. Won sat a cushion apart, her eyes focused on the screen, but her thoughts miles away. Won's eyes flicked to him. Their fingers brushed again as he passed, this time intentional. Mina didn't notice. She was too busy choosing snacks on a food app. As the door to the balcony closed behind Taehyung, a slow smirk crept on Won's face. The storm hadn't hit yet, but the air, it was charged. The city was quieter now. Street lamps cast golden glows, and the occasional breeze made the trees rustle softly. Taehyung walked beside Won, hands in his coat pockets, eyes flicking to her every few seconds. I needed some air, Won said, arms folded gently, her steps slow. It's weird being back in Seoul, I figured, he replied. You seemed distant at dinner. She chuckled, soft and dry. Maybe because I was sitting next to a man whose fiancé cheated with mine once. Taehyung glanced at her sharply. You know? Oh please, she smiled without humor. Mina thinks I'm dumb. But I see it all. He smirked, looking away. You're not dumb, Won. A few silent steps passed. I've been back only a few days and everything already feels heavy, she admitted. He looked over at her again. You shouldn't have to carry that weight alone. She stopped walking. So did he. They stood in the soft hum of silence, facing each other. You barely know me, she said, voice quiet now. I don't have to know every detail to see her. Not like her, he said honestly. Her gaze searched his. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or a warning, she whispered. Taehyung took a small step forward. Compliment, he said gently. Warning would be, don't fall for a man still stuck in a wrong engagement. She laughed once, shaking her head. Who said I'm falling? He tilted his head, teasing. You didn't deny it though. Won looked away, a slight blush on her cheeks. I just needed air, she repeated. Taehyung stepped even closer, his voice now almost a whisper. And I needed you, she blinked. What? He shook his head, exhaling. I meant I needed someone who understands the silence. That's all, she said, already walking again, hiding the tremor in her chest. He followed a few steps behind, lips curved slightly. Won? Yeah, tomorrow, he said, walking beside her now. Let's go again. Just S, not Mina. She paused. Fine, but only if you buy coffee. He smiled wider. It's a date then. She looked at him sharply. He quickly corrected. I mean, not a date, just a walk. She raised a brow. Right, they walked under the moonlight, and neither of them noticed they'd started walking closer, not touching, but dangerously close, and the space between them. It was getting smaller by the second. Won walked in, soft turtleneck hugging her frame, scarf looped loosely around her neck. The cafe was cozy, wooden shelves, yellow lights, and the faint scent of roasted beans and old pages. Taehyung was already seated, one hand around a coffee mug, other flipping through a sketchbook. He looked up and damn near forgot how to breathe. You're early, she teased, pulling her chair back. He took her to a rooftop garden above the cafe. The sun was setting, sky bleeding hues of pink and fire orange. Won played with her hair. Taehyung stood close behind her as they stared at the view. Did you always want this life? She asked. He was silent for a moment. No, he admitted. I always wanted peace. But I only found it after meeting you. She turned around slowly. He stepped closer. You don't have to say anything. I just... He exhaled, looking into her eyes. I don't know what this is yet, but when I look at you, it's not confusion. It's calm and warmth. Why? Anne's breath caught. Her heart thudded. He lifted his hand, brushing her hair behind her ear gently. I know it's crazy. I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't feel this, but I do. I really do. She didn't speak. It was hungry and aching, but not desperate. It was slow, deep, their lips moving in perfect rhythm, exploring what words hadn't dared to say yet. She melted into him. He pulled her closer. The kiss lingered, full of everything they'd hidden behind sarcasm and silence. When they finally pulled apart, foreheads touching, breath uneven, he whispered, "Tell me I'm not alone in this." She smiled softly. "You're not." And just like that, it wasn't not a date anymore. It was the beginning of something neither of them wanted to escape from.